What if the greatest moment of your life was also the saddest? What if a billion people were watching you, celebrating you, but not one of them could see you were drowning? Could a global television special, a technical marvel meant to showcase a triumphant king, actually be a public cry for help? This was Elvis Presley on January 14th, 1973. The show was called Aloha from Hawaii via satellite. It was a staggering success, but if you look closer, past the jumpsuit and the flash, you see something else. You see a man haunted by a profound sadness, a man putting on the performance of his life to hide the fact that his life was coming apart. Number 15, why did the show feel so static? The Aloha from Hawaii concert was beamed to over 40 countries. The production cost was $2,500,000, a record for 1973. It was watched by more people than the first moon landing. Yet, Elvis barely moved from a small spot at the center of the stage for the entire 65-minute main show. Watch the show again, notice his movements, he strikes a pose, he turns, he might take a step or two to grab a scarf. But he does not own the stage, he is not the prowling, energetic animal from the 1968 comeback special. He is largely rooted to the spot. His energy is projected through his voice and his arms, not his body. He seems anchored down, almost pinned in place by the spotlight. This wasn't a choice made for artistic minimalism. It was a sign of his physical condition. Just 4 years earlier in Las Vegas, he was a dynamo. He would slice through the air with karate kicks. He would lunge, spin, and drop to his knee. That Elvis was gone. The Elvis in Hawaii was heavier. He had just come off a crash diet to fit into the elaborate jumpsuits, but he was still bloated. His face was puffy. The physical exertion of his old moves was now too much. His band members noticed. They were used to following his lead, watching his every twitch for a cue. In Hawaii, the cues were smaller, more contained. The performance was powerful, but it was a different kind of power. It was the power of a monument, not a lightning storm. He stood like a statue, a beautiful sequined statue, and sang his heart out. But a statue is a cold, still thing. The lack of movement speaks to a deeper stillness, a kind of resignation. He was putting all his remaining energy into his voice because his body was beginning to fail him. He was only 38 years old, but he moved like a much older man. He was trapped in the jumpsuit, trapped on the stage, and trapped inside a body that was betraying him. The world saw a king on his throne, but a throne can also be a cage. The limited motion was the first, most subtle hint that the man inside the suit was running on empty. He was conserving every ounce of energy just to get through the show. The lack of physical freedom on that stage was a clear mirror of the lack of freedom in his life. Number 14, what was he hiding behind those sunglasses? For the rehearsal show on January 12th, 1973, Elvis wore a pair of custom-made gold-plated sunglasses. He kept them on for much of the performance. Inside a brightly lit arena at night, he wore sunglasses. It was a cool look, part of his rock star image, but it was more than that. It was a shield. Elvis was suffering from worsening glaucoma. The bright stage lights were physically painful to him. The glasses were a medical necessity as much as a fashion statement. He was in constant pain from the pressure in his eyes. This condition would plague him for the rest of his life. It was one of the many ailments he was battling in secret. Like, think about what that means. He is on stage trying to connect with thousands of people in the arena and a billion more through a camera lens, and he has to put a barrier between himself and them. He is literally hiding his eyes, the windows to the soul. He looks out at a sea of adoring faces, but they cannot truly look back at him. They cannot see the pain in his eyes. They cannot see the fatigue. They can only see their own reflection in his golden lenses. This act of hiding was central to his life at that point. He was hiding his prescription drug dependency. He was hiding his failing health. He was hiding his deep unhappiness following his separation from Priscilla just months earlier. He was hiding his frustration with his career, which was creatively stagnant and controlled by his manager, Colonel Tom Parker. The sunglasses were a perfect metaphor for his existence. He was the most famous man in the world, yet he was completely hidden. Everyone knew the image, the name, the voice. Almost no one knew the man. On that stage in Hawaii, he gave the world an incredible gift of music. But he kept himself protected, shielded, and in the dark. The darkness was comfortable. The darkness was where he lived, even under the glare of 1,000 lights. The person behind the glasses was tired. He was in pain, and he was profoundly alone. Number 13 was the water he drank, just water. Throughout the Aloha special, you see Elvis frequently turn to a small table behind him to drink from a cup. He sips from it between songs, wiping his brow. It looks like a performer rehydrating under hot lights. It was a normal thing to do. But with Elvis in 1973, few things were that simple. Members of his inner circle, the Memphis Mafia, have confirmed that his drinks on stage were often not just water. They were frequently Gatorade, but sometimes they were laced with other substances to give him a boost. He needed something to counteract the effects of the downers he took to sleep and the painkillers he took for his various ailments. His system was a chemical cocktail. To get up for a show, he needed uppers. To come down after, he needed downers. Watching the concert with this knowledge changes everything. Each sip of water is no longer an innocent act. It is a moment of maintenance for a complex, fragile machine. He wasn't just drinking to quench his thirst. He was drinking to keep himself functioning. He was drinking to be the person everyone expected him to be. He was fueling the performance with more than just his natural talent. This reliance on external substances to simply do his job is heartbreaking. The raw electric energy he had in the 1950s was organic. The focused power he had in 1968 was the result of hard work and a desire to prove himself. The energy in 1973 was, in part, chemically manufactured. He was propping himself up to get through the night. The tragedy is that he had to. The pressure of a global broadcast was immense. The expectations were astronomical. He felt he couldn't let anyone down, so he did what he thought he had to do. He took what he needed to take. Each sip from that cup is a quiet, desperate moment. It is the action of a man who no longer trusts his own body or his own mind to carry him through. He needed help. And the help he was getting was the very thing that was slowly destroying him. The cup on the table was both his lifeline and his poison. Number 12, why did he give away his belt? Near the end of the show, after a thunderous performance of An American Trilogy, a fan in the front row gave Elvis a small crown on a pillow. In a spontaneous gesture, Elvis took off the giant gold and jewel-encrusted belt from his jumpsuit and handed it to the fan. The crowd roared. It was a moment of incredible generosity. The belt was worth thousands of dollars. But was it just generosity, or was it something more? The belt was a championship belt. It was the kind of thing a boxer or a wrestler wears to signify he is the undisputed champion of the world. And in that moment, Elvis was. He had just conquered the entire planet via satellite. He was the king. So why give the belt away? Why give away the symbol of his victory at the very peak of his triumph? It was an impulsive act. And in that impulsivity, there is a hint of something sad. It was almost as if he was saying, "Here, you take this. I don't want it anymore." It was a shedding of the burden of being the champion. Being the king was heavy, the belt was physically heavy, but the title was spiritually crushing. He had achieved everything. He had more money, more fame, and more adoration than any person could ever dream of. And he was miserable. The success had not filled the void inside him. The global audience had not cured his loneliness. The championship belt did not make him feel like a winner in his own life. By giving it away, he was trying to connect with a single person in a genuine way. For a moment, he wasn't Elvis the superstar. He was just a man giving a gift to another person. It was a desperate reach for a real human moment in the middle of a massive impersonal spectacle. He was surrounded by 1 billion people, but he was trying to make a connection with just one. It was also a gesture of abdication. He had proven his point. He was the king. But maybe he was tired of wearing the crown and tired of wearing the belt. The gesture was beautiful and loved by the crowd. But beneath the surface, it could be seen as a man letting go, a man who had climbed to the top of the mountain only to realize there was nothing there for him. He gave away the prize because the prize had lost its meaning. Number 11. What's in the hesitation before my way? Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, insisted that My Way be included in the show. The song, made famous by Frank Sinatra, was a statement of defiance and individuality. For the Colonel, it was a perfect anthem for Elvis, the man who broke all the rules and did things on his own terms. The irony was savage. Elvis had less control over his own life and career than almost any other star of his magnitude. Watch him as he begins the song. He holds the lyrics in his hand. He almost never did this. He knew the words to hundreds, if not thousands, of songs. But for this one, he needed a cheat sheet. He looks down at it, and there is a visible hesitation, a slight stumble as he starts. He seems uncertain. This was not a man confidently declaring his life's philosophy. This was a man reading a script written for him by someone else. The words, "I did it my way," must have tasted like ash in his mouth. His way? His way was to make serious movies, but the Colonel booked him into a decade of forgettable musical comedies. His way was to tour the world, to play for his fans in Europe, Japan, and Australia. But the Colonel, a man with a mysterious past and no passport, never allowed it. This satellite show was the Colonel's solution. If Elvis can't go to the world will come to Elvis. And it was a technological triumph, but a personal compromise. So when he sang Regrets, I've had a few, but then again too few to mention, it is impossible not to see the deep sadness. His life was full of regrets. He regretted the lost movie opportunities. He regretted the years of creative stagnation. He regretted not having more control. He was singing a lie to a billion people, and the lie was written on a piece of paper in his hand because he couldn't bring himself to memorize it. The performance itself is powerful. His voice is magnificent. He sells the song. But the initial hesitation, the reliance on the lyric sheet, it all points to a man disconnected from the words he is singing. He is an actor playing the part of a man with no regrets. It is one of the most poignant and dishonest moments of the show. He was doing it the Colonel's way, and it was breaking his spirit. Number 10, did he look trapped by the cape? At the end of the concert, after his final song, Can't Help Falling in Love, Elvis is presented with a massive full-length cape. It is emblazoned with a giant American eagle. His assistants place it on his shoulders. He spreads his arms wide, and the cape creates a huge, iconic image. He is the American king, wrapped in the flag, a superhero of rock and roll. He holds the pose, then drops to one knee. The music swells. It is pure theater. But look at his face in that moment. He looks exhausted. The cape is physically heavy. It weighs him down. As he holds the pose, the triumphant look feels forced. It is a mask of victory. The cape, meant to be a symbol of his power and majesty, almost seems to smother him. It is a burden. The whole jumpsuit and cape era of his career is a story of diminishing returns. The outfits became more and more elaborate, more gaudy, as if the spectacle on the outside was meant to compensate for the emptiness on the inside. He was being turned into a caricature of himself, a Las Vegas version of the rebellious kid who changed the world. The cape in Hawaii is the ultimate expression of this. It is so big, so over the top, that it almost swallows him whole. It is a cage made of fabric and jewels. When he holds it out, he is not a soaring eagle. He is a man pinned to a cross of his own fame. He is performing the role of Elvis Presley, the living legend. The person, Elvis Aaron Presley, is lost somewhere inside the costume. After he holds the pose, he gets up and walks off stage. The cape trails behind him. He doesn't look back. There is no triumphant wave. He just walks away looking like a man who has finished a long, hard day's work. The cape was not a celebration. It was part of the uniform, and he seemed desperate to take it off. The weight of the cape was the weight of his own legend, and it was becoming too heavy to bear. Number 9, why sing? I'm so lonesome I could cry. Of all the songs Elvis performed in, Aloha from Hawaii, his cover of Hank Williams' I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, is the most revealing. He introduced it by saying, I'd like to sing a song that is probably the saddest song I've ever heard. This was not an accident. This was a choice. In the middle of the biggest, most glamorous, most triumphant show of his career, he chose to sing the saddest song he knew. It was a confession. He performed it sitting on a stool, a rare moment of stillness and intimacy in the massive production. His voice is gentle, fragile. He doesn't oversing it. He just lets the simple, heartbreaking lyrics do their work. Hear that lonesome whippoorwill. He sounds too blue to fly. The midnight train is whining low. I'm so lonesome I could cry. This was January 1973. He and Priscilla had separated in February 1972, and the divorce was tearing them apart. He was living in Graceland, a mansion that had become a gilded cage. His friends were on his payroll, their access to him controlled. He was surrounded by people, but he was desperately lonely. The song was not an act. It was his diary, read aloud to 1 billion people. The camera stays close on his face, and you can see it. The sadness is not performed. It is real. He looks vulnerable, lost. For these 2.5 minutes, the jumpsuit, the satellite, the global audience, all of it melts away. It is just a man with a guitar singing about his broken heart. Why would he do this? Why expose his deepest pain on a global stage? Perhaps it was the only way he could. He was not a man who could easily talk about his feelings. He was trapped by his own myth of being the strong, silent, sexy hero. But through music, through another man's words, he could tell the truth. He could tell the world, I am not the king you see. I am a man who is so lonesome he could cry. It is a staggering moment of vulnerability, a crack in the perfect facade that lets you see the immense sorrow he was carrying. It was a cry for help disguised as a country song. Number 8 is that defiance or desperation in An American Trilogy. An American Trilogy was a staple of Elvis's 70s concerts. It's a medley of 3 19th century songs, Dixie, the Battle Hymn of the Republic, and All My Trials. Arranged by Mickey Newbury, it is a piece of soaring, patriotic, and spiritual drama. In Hawaii, his performance of it is one of the show's highlights. It is vocally astonishing, but watch him closely. This is not a man at ease. This is a man fighting. He is fighting to get the notes out. As the song builds to its massive crescendo with His Truth is Marching On, you can see the strain on his face. The veins in his neck bulge. His face is red with effort. He is pouring every last ounce of his physical and emotional energy into this one moment. The performance is breathtaking, but it is also painful to watch. It feels like a final, desperate stand. He is trying to prove something to the world, to the critics, but most of all to himself. He is trying to prove that he still has it, that he's still the most powerful voice in the world. He is wrestling with the music and he wins, but it takes everything he has. The flute solo in the middle of the song is a moment of quiet grace. But for Elvis, it is a moment to gasp for air. You can see him, shoulders heaving, preparing himself for the final assault on the song's climax. He is not just singing the song, he is surviving it. This struggle is a mirror of his larger struggle. He was fighting to stay relevant. He was fighting his own body. He was fighting his addictions. He was fighting his loneliness. An American Trilogy became his personal battleground. On that stage, he could fight and win. He could achieve a moment of clear, undeniable victory. The tragedy is that the victory was so fleeting. When the song ended and the applause washed over him, he was still the same man with the same problems. The performance was a temporary escape, a 3-minute war that he won, but it did nothing to change the course of the larger losing battle of his life. Number 7, what does his banter with the band really show? Between songs, Elvis talks to the audience and his band. He cracks a few jokes. He hands out scarves. He seems relaxed, in control. This was part of his charm. He can make a massive arena feel like an intimate club. But in the Aloha special, the banter feels different from his earlier shows. It feels rehearsed, a little tired. He makes a joke about his belt being strapped to the suit. He teases his guitarist, James Burton. It's all part of the show. But the spontaneity, the genuine wit that was so present in the '68 special is muted. He seems to be going through the motions. He is performing the role of Elvis, the charming host. What is more telling are the moments he turns his back to the audience to speak to his band. He gives them instructions, calls out the next song. In these moments, the camera catches him in profile or from behind. The public mask drops for a split second, and what you see is not a king in command. You see a man at work, a man who looks tired. His relationship with his band was one of the few genuine things left in his professional life. He respected them as musicians, and they respected him. On stage, they were his support system, his safety net. When he turned to them, he was turning to his allies. He was in his element, leading the music. But even here, there is a sense of isolation. He is the boss. He is the star. He is separate from them. They are a tight, professional unit, but he is alone at the front of the stage. The lighthearted jokes and the professional instructions are both ways of maintaining a distance. He is being friendly, but not familiar. He is keeping everyone, even his closest collaborators, at arm's length. The banter, which is supposed to create a feeling of intimacy, actually highlights his solitude. He is talking, but he is not connecting. He is making jokes, but he does not seem truly happy. It is another part of the performance, another layer of the artifice. He is playing a part, and the part requires him to be charming and in control, but the effort shows. Number 6, why does Fever seem so subdued? And Elvis's version of Fever was famous for its slinky, suggestive choreography. In his early Vegas shows, his performance of the song was pure charisma. He would use the microphone stand as a prop, his body moving with a fluid, hypnotic grace. It was playful and confident. In Aloha from Hawaii, his performance of Fever is noticeably different. It is subdued. He stays mostly in one spot. The famous suggestive moves are toned down, almost sketched in rather than fully performed. His voice is still great, but the physical performance lacks the fire of previous years. He was no longer the sexual provocateur of the 1950s or even the confident leading man of the late 1960s. He was a 38-year-old man in a physical decline. The raw animal magnetism was being replaced by a more static icon-like presence. He was still sexy to his millions of fans, but he was no longer performing sexiness with his body. He was letting the suit, the voice, and the legend do the work for him. This change is significant. His physical expressiveness was a huge part of his identity as a performer. It was what made him so revolutionary in the first place. By 1973, that part of him was fading. He was becoming more reliant on the symbols of his power, the jumpsuit, the cape, the orchestra, and less on the raw power of his own body. The subdued Fever is a sad moment because it shows what he had lost. He had lost the physical freedom, the youthful abandon. He was now a more constrained performer, both physically and emotionally. The fire was still there, but it was banked. He was preserving his energy, pacing himself. The man who once seemed to have an infinite supply of energy was now having to carefully manage a finite resource. The performance is professional and smooth, but the danger is gone. And without the danger, a key part of what made Elvis so compelling was missing. Number 5, what's missing from his smile? Elvis Presley had one of the most famous smiles in the world. It could be a playful smirk, a charming grin, or a full-on joyful laugh. It was a smile that could light up a room, or a stadium, or a movie screen. In Aloha from Hawaii, he smiles many times. He smiles at the audience, he smiles at his band, he smiles after a big song, but look closely at his eyes. Often, the smile does not reach his eyes. His mouth is smiling, but his eyes look tired, distant, or even sad. It is the polite smile of a man doing his job. It is a professional smile, not a smile of genuine joy. There are moments of real connection, but they are fleeting. For much of the show, he seems to be wearing a mask, and the smile is part of that mask. This disconnect between his expression and his eyes is one of the most gut-wrenching aspects of the performance. It reveals the chasm between the public persona and the private man. The world wanted to see Elvis the happy, triumphant king. So he gave them that. He smiled on cue, he played the part, but the real Elvis was not happy. He was in physical pain. He was heartbroken over his failed marriage. He was creatively unfulfilled. He was trapped in a life that from the outside looked like a dream, but from the inside often felt like a nightmare. The empty smile is the smile of a man who is profoundly lonely in a room full of people. He is giving the audience what they want, but he is keeping his true self hidden away. He is performing happiness, and there is nothing sadder than performed happiness. Each time he smiles without his eyes, it is a small betrayal of himself, another moment where he has to suppress his own feelings to meet the expectations of others. The weight of those expectations is visible in the weariness behind his eyes. He was smiling for the world, but inside he was not. Number 4, why does he lean on his musicians so much? The TCB band and his orchestra were among the best musicians in the world. They were a powerhouse. In the Aloha show, they are flawless. But Elvis seems to rely on them in a new way. He uses them as a crutch, not just as a backing band. Listen to how the arrangements are structured. They are huge, bombastic. The orchestra swells, the backing vocalists coo, the drums thunder. At times, this massive wall of sound seems to be there to support a voice that is still powerful, but perhaps not as resilient as it once was. He lets the orchestra carry the emotion in places where he might have once carried it himself. There are also moments where he physically leans on his band. He will turn and put a hand on guitarist James Burton's shoulder or share a laugh with drummer Ronnie Tutt. These look like moments of camaraderie, and they are, but they are also moments where he seems to be drawing strength from them, grounding himself. He turns away from the immense pressure of the global audience and finds a moment of respite with his fellow musicians. This reliance shows his professionalism. He knew he was not in peak condition, so he surrounded himself with the best and trusted them to help him through. But it also shows his vulnerability. The Elvis of the 50s was a self-contained explosion. He needed nothing and no one else on stage. The Elvis of 1973 was the general of a large army, and he needed every soldier to play their part perfectly for the battle to be won. He was no longer a solo act, even when he was in the spotlight. He was the fragile, precious center of a large, complex, and expensive machine. The machine was designed to protect him, to amplify him, and to cover for any weaknesses. The Aloha show is a triumph of that machine. But it is heartbreaking to see a man who was once the most self-reliant performer on earth needing so much support just to stand in the spotlight. Number 3, did his voice crack during What Now My Love? What Now My Love is a song of pure despair. It's about love ending and facing an empty future. His performance of it in Hawaii is operatic in its intensity. He starts quietly, full of sorrow, and builds to a raging, almost screaming climax. What now, my love? Now that you've left me, how can I live through another day? It is a masterful vocal performance, but if you listen with incredible closeness, you can hear the strain. You can hear the raw, ragged edge of his voice as he pushes it to its absolute limit. It is not a crack in the technical sense, but an emotional one. The polished perfection of his studio recordings is gone. What you hear is raw, unfiltered pain. He is not just singing the lyrics. He is living them. The song is about Priscilla. It is about the end of his family. It is about his fear of the future. The performance is so raw because the emotions are real. He is channeling all of his personal agony into the song. This is what makes it so powerful, but also so devastating to witness. It feels voyeuristic. We are watching a man have a breakdown on stage, but he is doing it so artistically that it is applauded as great entertainment. He is taking his personal tragedy and turning it into a commodity for global consumption. The effort it takes for him to get through the song is immense. At the end, he is visibly drained. He has given it everything. He has ripped open his chest and shown the world his broken heart. And the world cheered. It is a lonely, terrifying moment. He is screaming his pain into a microphone, and the sound that comes back is applause. No one is coming to save him. They are just enjoying the show. Number 2, what happened in the seconds after the final note. The show ends with Can't Help Falling in Love, his traditional closer. He sings it beautifully. Then the cape is placed on his shoulders. He strikes the famous pose. The orchestra plays his exit music. He walks off stage. The announcer says, "Elvis has left the building." For the television audience, that is the end. but what happened in the moments after he stepped out of the spotlight. According to those who were there, the transformation was immediate and shocking. The larger-than-life superstar vanished. In his place was a pale, sweating, exhausted man, barely able to stand. He would be half carried back to his dressing room. The adrenaline that had sustained him for the last hour would vanish, leaving behind a profound physical and emotional crash. This is the moment that is never seen. The moment the performance ends and the reality returns. The reality was a man in chronic pain, addicted to a dangerous cocktail of prescription medications, and suffering from a loneliness so deep that no amount of applause could touch it. He had just performed for 1 billion people. He was celebrated as the greatest entertainer in the world. And within minutes, he was back in a quiet room, facing his own demons. This is the ultimate gut-wrenching truth of Aloha from Hawaii. The show was not a cure. It was a temporary distraction. It did not solve any of his underlying problems. In fact, it may have made them worse by raising the stakes and increasing the pressure. He had reached the absolute summit. There was nowhere left to go. The silence of the dressing room after the roar of the crowd must have been deafening. He had given the world everything he had left. And what was he left with? Just himself. And he did not know how to live with himself. The show was a glorious, beautiful lie. The truth was waiting for him just off stage, in the quiet and the dark. Number 1 was the entire show a goodbye. Looking back at Aloha from Hawaii, with the knowledge of what was to come, his deepening drug use, his deteriorating health, his death just 4.5 years later, the entire event takes on a different meaning. It no longer looks like a triumphant peak. It looks like a last will and testament. It looks like a long, beautiful, heartbreaking goodbye. He sang My Way, a song about summing up a life. He sang I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, a song about his deepest state of being. He sang An American Trilogy, a song that feels like a eulogy for a nation and for himself. He gave away his championship belt as if abdicating his throne. He poured every last drop of his talent and energy into this one final global statement. It was as if he knew, on some level, that this was it. This was the last time he would be this good, this focused, this powerful on a global stage. The rest of his career would be a slow, sad decline, a shadow of what he had been. The Aloha special was his closing argument. It was his attempt to crystallize his legacy, to create one perfect, shining moment that would outlive the messy, tragic reality of his final years. He succeeded. The show is a masterpiece, but it is a masterpiece painted with pain. Every song, every gesture, every tired smile hints at the deep sadness that was consuming him. He was saying goodbye not just to the audience at the end of the show, but to his own greatness. He was showing the world the king won last time, before the man inside the suit finally gave up the fight. The greatest tragedy of Aloha from Hawaii is that 1 billion people were watching, but nobody really saw him. We saw the legend, the icon, the jumpsuit. We missed the drowning man who was calling for help in the only way he knew how, by singing his heart out.